Labor Day weekend in the U.S. Got a nice, beautiful afternoon, and I've been wanting to talk about natural cap rates for a long time. It's a concept we have developed here at Basin. It's based on my 20-year career in commercial and investment real estate, and it's based off the cap rate concept in commercial real estate, or capitalization rate. And so what we're going to do, this is a off-the-cuff stream, but I do have some stuff prepared, ready to look at. I'm going to try not to go in deep on everything. I'm going to try and just do a broad swath of like what a cap rate is, how it works in commercial and investment real estate, what a natural cap rate is, and how we are applying it to natural assets and whatnot. So with that, I'm going to get started. But if people want to do a deep dive on these natural assets you're seeing, or cap rates in general, or natural cap rates, I'm all game. So just DM me and let me know, and we'll go ahead and do that. With that, I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so we get out of that one here. Let's put my phone on Do Not Disturb, so we're not getting interrupted. So let's just check what we got going here. There we go. Okay, cool. So natural cap rate, we're using it with our natural asset insurance. And what it does is it values the ecological flows compared to the ecosystem. Or a way to look at it is you have ecosystem services, which can be valued annually in dollars. Those are the flows of natural capital. And then you have the stocks of natural capital, which are the ecosystems: wetlands, rivers, grassland, shrublands, open land, stuff like that. So the way to think of it real quick is just, if we look at this is basically natural cap rate. You can kind of frame everything in natural asset, so like a pond, a property, or it could be an ecosystem, it can be your house, it can be a farm, it can be a giant forest, it could even be a state or a country or a continent if you wanted to. But we're focused at the natural asset, real property level, and how do we protect and restore these stocks and flows of natural capital. And so the way to think of it, though, is like flows at the top. That's an annual flow across the ecosystem, or from the ecosystem, the stocks, which is the underlying. And we'll get into that more. But conceptually, if we map it to cap rate, which is a primary indicator in commercial and investment real estate of how all commercial real estate is valued, apartment buildings, strip centers, industrial properties, you name it, are valued based on income, which is the top of the formula, and then the value, or the cap rate, is the denominator below. And we'll do an example of that in the middle, but I'm just kind of trying to set some framing of, like, you have the flows, which is the income flow at the top number, and you have the value, or the cap rate, below, and then that relational value in commercial real estate determines what a property sells for, what a property is bought for, what a property appraises for, under what's called the income approach. There's two other types of value in commercial real estate: cost approach and market comparable approach. If you've done a residential house, market comps is kind of how house values are calculated. But in commercial real estate and in investment real estate, if we're going to make nature an asset class, we have to figure out how to make it an investment. So making the ecosystem or the natural capital be the greatest value, we have to make it an investment to get the funds into it. So that's what this whole concept does, is it values the flows above here, annual flows, relative to the stocks, the ecosystem. But we'll get into that in a minute, but it's based on ecosystem condition, and it triangulates it to real asset costs, so we can tie it into the real world. We're not just talking hocus pocus numbers here. But this, so if you look real quick, like natural cap rate, it's the same basically formula, but flows at the top up here are ecosystem service values, and stocks below are the real asset value. And flows, though, you're asking, how does this take into account nature? The flow value, the ecosystem service value, is based on ecosystem condition. So if you have a wetlands or a grassland or river or riparian, whatever, we use a scale of 1 to 10. if we use biocomplexity, it'd be a scale of 0 to 1, and it's kind of the same thing, but you look at like what's the ecosystem condition. And so a pure, like great, beautiful ecosystem untouched would be a 10, obviously. A degraded, polluted, crappy, rundown, industrial wasteland, desert, with nothing on it, but also contaminated would be probably not 0, but like a 1 or like a 0.25 or something. And so natural cap rate takes into account ecosystem condition, takes into account ecosystem service values across 19 different ecosystem services, from climate stability to water, to air, to pollination, to legacy. And we'll get into that later. We can do a deep dive on the flows and the stocks of natural capital. But then the stocks value is based on real asset value, like what's the real world cost of this property or this polygon to buy, purchase, do the deal, develop the carbon project or the biodiversity project or the natural capital or natural asset project. And so stocks is kind of both. It's the real asset cost, but it's also the ecosystems that are in this polygon right here. So if you have two different types of ecosystems in a polygon, let's say riparian and forest, or let's say forest and wetland, then we would take the land cover and you multiply the land cover out by the acreage or by the hectares of the property or the asset, and you calculate the ecosystem condition score. You attribute the land cover, the ecosystem cover, based on condition to the value. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but for framing, just look at like natural cap rate. You have flows that come from the asset. There can be a lot of different beneficiaries. It can be the natural asset owner. It can be the surrounding properties. It can be the community. It can be the species, whatnot. And then the stocks are the ecosystems. But then let's just back up real quick and look at cap rate. So in commercial real estate, it's very similar. Income is the flows of cash flow and financial value, and then value is the price or the cost of the property, and then that equals the cap rate. We'll look at that in a minute. But people are like, why the frick are you gonna like look at these spreadsheets? Why the heck are we gonna look at all these different spreadsheets here in a minute to do this? And why the heck do you have this all these different properties up here, and all these natural assets and all these numbers, and talking so many dollars, and aren't we talking about intrinsic value? And yeah, we are, but we have to talk about both. For me, at least my conclusion is that we have to use the instrumental value, so these real world dollar values and these hypothetical ecosystem service values, to protect the intrinsic value. Because right now, the intrinsic value is not being protected, it's not being valued, it's not being honored. It's just, for the most part, it's just getting raped and pillaged, and things are turning into shopping centers and roads and buildings. And none of that stuff is bad. Humans need that stuff. But if we're not careful, if you've ever seen the map of the global image of Earth at night, and you look at all the lights, like just look at Asia or look at the EU or look at the United States, and you see all the different lights. Look what we're doing to the world. Like that's human development. And imagine a world where there's no darkness, there's no ecosystems, there's no nature, or no like raw nature or ecosystem nature. It's just all human nature. And to me, that's not a world I want to live in, and we're going to lose all the benefits, whatnot. I'm not going to get into that right now, but basically, we have to use instrumental value to protect the intrinsic value, and this is a way to make nature and natural capital invincible. And so people will say, like, well, I don't want to use numbers. So to frame that, we're just going to look at one of my favorite Ed Abbey quotes here. I think this is from like maybe Desert Solitaire or something. I'm not going to read it. I can zoom in on it, but it's one final paragraph of advice, basically. Get yourselves out, run the rivers, bag the peaks, whatnot. And it says here in the normal one, it says, you'll outlive your enemies by basically, enjoying and being out in nature and being alive, and one sweet victory of like these people with their eyes behind desks, like glued to calculators, like just focus on numbers and dollars and whatnot. And sure, I think that's kind of the problem with a lot of what's happening in our economy, is that the world is so financialized, but we're financializing kind of the wrong things, or we're financializing just profit and money over other things that are valuable. We're not accounting for those other things that are valuable. And so by just looking at financial value, which is what the real estate industry does, and what's called the highest and best use of real property, it just looks at financial and economic value. It doesn't look at holistic or social or cultural or nature or ecological value. So this quote, kind of ends like, says, their hearts in a safe deposit box and their eyes hypnotized by desk calculators. I promise you this, we will outlive the bastards. And it's a super powerful quote, right? I love it. Someone gave me this quote, either Emily Lubchenko or Tom Hicks. Someone gave me this quote, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. But basically, I edit the quote right here. So at the end, change the last sentence to, however, by using desk calculators to value nature, I promise you this, you outlive the bastards. So that's our approach. We're going to use desktop calculators and spreadsheets and financial value and economic value and instrumental value to value nature properly, to not outlive the bastards, but to like have, so that our kids can live and their kids can live healthy, happy lives. So, so that's the quote. We're gonna close that, but if you want to see that, ping me for it. I think it's from Desert Solitaire, but basically use the calculator to value nature, basically. And so back here, let's just we're looking at cap rate here. This is normal cap rate. So just do a search, commercial real estate, cap rate, capitalization rate. It's a relational value between income, what a property generates, and the building or the value, the price, the cost, and it spits it out in a indicator, which is the cap rate in a percent. And so if we look at just normal commercial investment real estate, and this is what I did for 20 years, right here. I just did a quick search for retail properties across the US, just nothing, 17,000 properties. And you can look here, most of these properties are advertised by cap rate. So this is a $3 million property, close to a 7 cap. We use cap for short. $3.5 million property, 710 cap. Walgreens, $3.7 million property, 8 cap. Let's keep going here. Gas station, CVS at a 5 cap. And what you'll realize though is that, like, how the heck are all these priced? Like, what is the price based on? They're priced on the rent that these properties are paying relative to the market value of the real estate or the cost of the real estate. And I'm not going to get into kind of how that rent is calculated on like a drugstore versus a gas station or whatnot. I'm happy to do that another time. I've actually done that on a bunch of my 1031 exchange videos from a different life a few years ago. But basically, this cap rate you're seeing is a proportional relational value of like what this asset is producing in income. And cap rates historically are based on interest rates. So if interest rates are 5%, a cap rate might be 7% or 6%. It trades over the interest rate because the cost of money costs this, and the cap rate has to be above it to be that. And that's how the cap rates are calculated. And then the market determines what cap rate they're willing to pay based on alternative investments in the market. And then that dictates the price of a property. So if like this property right here, this Pizza Hut and Dunkin' Donuts was an 8 cap, it's going to be worth a lot less. Like it's going to be worth like $2 million. If it was a 5 cap, it's going to be worth like $3.5 million, something like that. Like it's right now at a 6.74 cap, it's worth $2.9 million. And that's the market is valuing that asset, not based on what the building costs to buy or what the land costs to buy, but they're basing it on the flows, the cash flow that property produces. So that's that relational value. And so real quick, if we just run just a quick analysis on cap rate, and let's just take, let's just use 7.5 cap rate here. Yeah. Let's just change that so you can see it. All right, so let's use a $100,000. I'll make that bigger so you can kind of see what's going on here. $100,000 NOI. This is just for sake of example on a normal like investment real estate deal. At a 7.5 cap, the value of that property is $1.3 million. And so what happens if interest rates go up or there's some risk associated with that property and the cap rate goes up to 10%, what's going to happen to that value? That value is going to drop drastically. And that value is going to go to $1 million. Watch. Boom. So $100,000 of income, it goes to $1 million of value. So it was at $1.3 million, but then let's say interest rates drop. That's why everyone's so fixated on interest rates and the cost of money. Otto, come here. Otto, come here. And let's say cap rates or demand or the lease is longer, or it's a super really good low risk investment, a ground lease deal, or McDonald's leases it or whatnot, and it's a 5 cap. What's going to happen to that value? It's actually going to double. It's going to go to $2 million. So watch, bam. So the income, the flow value right here, didn't change, but what changed is the market's perception of the risk or that return that they need for the asset, and therefore the value changes. And you can run this formula in any which direction. You know, we could change the NOI, or let's go, we gotta go $50,000. You know, it's gonna be $1 million property at a 5 cap. You do a 10 cap, you know, it's gonna lower it to a $500,000 property, whatnot. And you know, you could come up here and go, you know, what's $1 million of income on a property? And it makes a $10 million property at a 10 cap. Great, that's awesome. But and so I guess what really happens here is watch what happens though when you lower the cap rate. So if you have a $10 million property, you buy it at a 10 cap, interest rates drop, and all of a sudden you have a 7.5% cap rate property. Look what happened to your property value. All of a sudden you have a $13 million property. It's crazy, but that's how the market works. So I've sold lots of deals in the past, done lots of deals solely based on cap rate. You develop a deal at a 8 cap, a 10 cap, and you sell it, or you hold it at a 5 or a 6 cap, and you basically, that money differential is your value to borrow against, your value to cash out against, whatnot, the value of your asset. So what it is though, it's just like this relational value is what I want to get into. Like, I don't think we need to get into like all these properties, but I think something to think about is what if, kind of where we started with this idea, what if nature and natural assets, what if these properties here showed up here? And investors, real asset investors, were like, this is kind of where we started. It's not where we ended now, but basically, what if they could buy this $5 million Dollar General, or buy, you know, a $5 million, you know, the $6 million riparian wetlands forest in the Southeast United States? Instead of a 7% financial return, it's got a 31% natural cap rate. So some of that is income, some of that is just ESV value. But what if, like, how much money can we drive towards nature and natural capital if investors in the multi-trillion-dollar real asset market bought these properties, invested in these properties? So that's where we started. But then you end up with this, like, well, then people are just constantly flipping properties, and you know, they're extracting value from nature, and the local land stewards, whatnot, aren't benefiting from it. So that's why we came up with insurance, which basically makes the property free and clear of debt and rent at the end of it. So basically, every single one of these properties would be, the investor would still get their rate of return during the hold period, but then there's no residual value to the investor because they've got their rate of return during the hold period. And that property can go to nature. It can go to the local community. It can go to land back to whoever you want. You want to trace the ancestral roots back as far as you want, give the property back to them. It's great. But the natural, excuse me, the real asset investor got what they came for. They might have got this 6% or 7% or 10% yield, while at the same time putting these natural assets back into what we call in trust, into the commons owned by nature, out of the speculative market. And the kind of the cool thing about all this is, because it's based on natural capital value and ecosystem service value and ecosystem condition, is that if they were to develop this property right here, this wetlands property, and make it be buildings like this value right here, this flow value, goes away. Basically, it goes to what the income of the property is. So if you rip out this wetlands, rip out the forest, and you developed it into parking lots and strip center, your cap rate is going to be 6%, 7%, 5%, 10%, whatever. You're not basically getting the natural capital value, or society is not getting the natural capital value. There's no public goods value anymore because you've destroyed the nature. And so part of our thesis here is that nature basically is the most undervalued and mispriced asset in the world. And you can actually carry that over to land, because you look at land over here, just parcels. and you look at what the natural cap rate shows us what is undervalued and what is overvalued based on a nature value or based on a human value. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 of these properties or natural assets real quick and try and show you the gambit of like that relational value. So I just want to stop there for a minute, take a deep breath, go back to cap rate. This is real income right here. This right here, if it's $2 million of ecosystem service value, is not real income. And that's the problem right now. And that's what we're trying to solve for. Some of it can be real income, whether it be with the certificates of insurance that we're selling. It can be with real dollars paid by use of the property, grazing of the property, regen agriculture of the property, carbon credits, biodiversity credits, all these things that a lot of the people in all these markets, these natural capital and ecological asset markets are working on. This $2 million can be made up of that. But what we're doing is we're valuing it first. Before we price it, before we sell it, we're valuing it first. So the big difference between a normal commercial real estate deal and a natural asset deal, that's what investors ask me every single time. They want to know what my real cash flow is going to be. Is this value is cash annually? This is just value to society, to nature, to species, to the region. If you're a business owner and you're dependent on clean water, clean air, pollination, then that's value to your business. And it's not cash yet, but our goal is to turn it into cash eventually. And I'll show you that. First, we value it, but then we price it based on cost. And that's what the natural cap rate helps us do, because it triangulates that flow value right here. There we go, natural cap rate. It helps us triangulate that flow value to the real asset cost right here. And so the biggest difference though is, cash, value, and these are real numbers of like what an asset might be worth in the real market. So with that said, we're going to quickly we're not going to look at any more of these deals, but if you want to come back to it, go to Crexi or LoopNet, whatnot, and you can see all sorts of investment deals. And this is what I did for 20 years. And money does not necessarily care about the size of that building, who the tenant is per se. They want to know how secure that income stream is, how secure that asset is, or what the benefits that they're getting from that asset is. And so the buyers of a natural asset deal, right, is going to be different than a buyer of a Dollar General or Taco Bell deal. That's just square one, right? It makes sense for cities, governments, nonprofits, blended finance vehicles, or real asset investors who want to provide capital for these deals and get a rate of return while holding the deal, taking it off the market, taking it off the chopping block, and get real yield when we convert value to cash. And at the end of the day, they've gotten their 6%, 5%, 10%, or it could be 2%, depending on who the investor is. We can underwrite the deal anyway. That real asset, that natural asset, is put in trust. It's put in a conservation easement, and it can't be developed. So it's taken off the chopping block from day one when we write an insurance policy. And then if the policy is 10 years or if the policy is 20 years, it's put in permanent protection in that into the 10 years or into the 20-year period. We can show you that in a minute. But also just real quick, so we got real basically natural cap rate, right? Flows divided by stocks, similar to a cap rate. Income divided by value equals the cap rate. If you want to see like kind of the rationale behind it, just go to our docs, docs.basin.global, and you can see the formula. It's got use cases, it has examples, talks about relational value. It kind of goes in all this. The appendix covers all the methodology of how the heck did we come up with this ecosystem service value? How the heck are we coming up with the real asset value? How the heck are we coming up with a cap rate? What is a cap rate? What are the land covers? So the stocks of ecosystems. What are the flows, the ecosystem services? How do you value it? It's all here in our docs. So if you want to come back to it, docs.basin.global, just go there and take a look. And then, so we got these simplified models, right? Natural cap rate. Let's just look at like what a natural cap rate is actually made of, or natural asset insurance. So these are all the things we value that goes into a natural cap rate. So it's based on the stocks and flows of natural capital, tons of academic research behind that, and we're putting a different twist on it because we're applying it to real assets. But basically, 19 ecosystem services are the flows, and 15 ecosystems are the stocks. Those are the land covers. And ecosystem services, you're going to notice some of these are already priced. People are like, well, I don't want to price nature. It's like, dude, nature's already priced. The food you buy at the grocery store, the gas and the food, the wood you burn, the wood in your house, the cotton in your t-shirt, whatever, it's already priced here: food, energy, raw materials. So 3 of the ecosystem services are priced. Recreation is another one that's priced right now. Pest and disease control, or like antibiotics and all these pharmaceuticals trying to get stuff out of the jungle, that's priced to a certain extent. But it's all these other ones. Water is priced, right? But not necessarily clean water isn't priced. Just water is priced. Water supply might show in supply and demand. If you're in Cape Town, South Africa, and you're running out of water, your water prices are going to go up. If you're in Phoenix, right, or California, your water prices are going to go up because there's not enough water abundance. But a lot of this other stuff isn't necessarily priced or properly valued. But like, people say, I don't want to price nature. It's like, dude, nature is already priced. Food, energy, raw materials, recreation, you pay for it, right? So like, what about all these other, like 15, 16 categories? They're just not valued. We're not trying to price it. We're not trying to increase the cost of everything. We're just trying to value it. And all these come from natural assets. Our whole thesis at Basin is that natural assets, the underlying real asset, gives us a perfect container. It gives us all sorts of capital market tools and whatnot to finance these deals and put these deals into practice. You don't have to go and beg for money. You don't have to go and ask for donations. You don't have to go squat on a piece of property and regenerate it and hope that no one's going to kick you off the property while you're squatting and regenerating the property. It gives you like real world tools: valuation, appraisal, capital markets, laws, things that have been in existence for hundreds of years. I know the new system is trying to recreate this and build this outside of this, but our thing is like, if we're going to transition the world to 30 by 30 or half Earth, where all the things we rely on, everything that economy and society is based on, nature is protected, preserved, and we have those benefits, then we need to value this stuff. We need to protect it. We need to conserve it. We need to restore it. And this gives us a working model to do that. And our goal, if we do our job right, we will be non-existent in 20, 30, 50 years, might be 100 years. But like, we will put enough natural assets, enough real assets in trust, into permanent conservation, where there's no more rent seeking on these assets. There's no more debt on these assets. It's just nature. And one of my biggest goals is like connectivity and habitat corridors and in landscape size investments, and how you actually connect these things together. And One Earth, for example, and the global safety net product or tool that they have shows how you could actually connect all this stuff under a half Earth model or under a 30 by 30 model. So if you go to Global Safety Net or One Earth Bioregional Framework, they have map overlays for connectivity. And so one of our goals is to actually parcel by parcel by parcel, or property by property by property, right? All these, make those habitat corridors, make those landscape size ecosystems. And yeah, that's a great end goal. And that's where I think a lot of people are starting from. Conserve, 1 million acres or, 5 million hectares or whatever in this area. And it's like, yeah, great. But you have, how many pieces of real property has that been chopped up into to start with? Like, look at this property right here. This is in the Midwestern United States. Like, you can quickly see, like look at all the different parcels. You can tell, like, if you wanted to conserve this whole area right here, how many landowners are you going to have to talk? You're not going to use eminent domain to do that. You're not going to get any traction. You basically have to go and create incentives for every single one of these landowners to connect this watershed, or the state or the federal government has to come in and take these properties, or you have to get easements, or you have to get use agreements, whatnot, to connect all this. But what if there was a model through investing in natural assets and natural capital that could make this property worth more as nature, this property worth more as nature, this property worth more as nature. Yeah, maybe this could be still be the town, right? Maybe this could be the school, maybe this could be a shopping center. But what if you could create a connected corridor by patchworking these properties together via realistic, tangible, measurable frameworks that finance nature? And so that's what we built. So I'm not saying what if. That's actually what we built. That's what this is. So stocks and flows of natural capital, that's what goes into the natural cap rate. We value the flows of natural capital that come from the ecosystem based on ecosystem condition. Ecosystem meaning what's the land cover of the natural asset or the real asset. It could be one ecosystem type, be 2, 3, maybe even 4. It's definitely not going to be all 15. But what's the value? And you'll see how we put all those dollar values, and then you can compare those. And they're not necessarily market values, but they are dollar ecosystem service values and dollar real asset values that can be calculated, measured, tracked, adjusted, buffered, risk adjusted, whatnot. And all of our methodology, the real value of natural capital framework, gets into that. So that's what the natural cap rate is made of. This is what's underneath it. And then what happens is we then triangulate that, right, to so let's just look at the first property here, the first asset. 41, this is the wrong one. This is, so we're gonna actually look at this, the 83 acre wetland property here. This one right here, based on ecosystem condition, we're giving it a 10. It's wetlands, temperate forest. The value of the ecosystem services values are all seen down here. This is a good view of the relational value. This is the value it generates every year. This is the flow value. And this is what it would cost to protect that value permanently. So if I were to come to you and say, look, for $300,000, you can protect, this is $1.5 million, $1.4 of annual natural capital public good value, and then some value to the private property owner as well. But if you're the community, if you're a business owner, if you're Coca-Cola, if you're Pepsi, if you're Unilever, whoever, if I were to come to you and say, for this amount, $300,000, you basically are getting this much of value or creating this much of value, and it's a tradable financial instrument, buyable, sellable, burnable, whatnot. Would you do that deal? And they might say, well, no, we don't have $300,000 to invest. We really would like to acquire that value. And we say, well, we have an insurance policy, and we can write that policy that matches your budget. What is your budget of the policy? And so you can come down here and look at, this is all the land cover, shows the wetlands, whatnot. But you can look at the premiums, and these are the budgets. This is the annual real value of natural capital based on ecosystem condition, just at a normal discount rate. It's an appreciating asset, not being extracted from. $1.4 million a year goes up to well over $2 million a year by 2050 of value. If you were to do the deal today, we can put that deal together somewhere around that $3,000 range. Budget's too high. Oh, we can do it for you by 2030. It'd be permanently protected from day one, right here, permanently protected by 2030. That's too expensive. Whatever, $65,000. You can kind of see right here, or $54,000 a year. Too expensive. Our budget is more like $30,000 a year. Oh, my impact on my investment is $50,000. So for $30,000 a year, I'm protecting $1.44 million of annual natural capital value. Look at the discount I'm getting. Honestly, who wouldn't do this deal if you're trying to protect nature, conserve nature? If you're trying to protect your water supply, if you're Starbucks and you're filling your little drinks, if you're trying to protect your pollination of your crops and your plants and your perfume flowers, who wouldn't do these deals? And we can underwrite this model on any asset, any polygon, anywhere in the world. We can run these numbers based on land cover, ecosystem type, and based on ecosystem condition, and then we triangulate it to the underlying real asset value right here. and it spits out all this data. So basically, $300,000 investment's too much. I can invest $30,000 a year. By 2050, that property will be permanently protected, but it's protected from day one when you make that annual premium payment, or if an investor makes that annual premium payment. So that's the model right there. This is insurance with an E. So natural asset insurance, using the natural cap rate, which is what we're focused on, gives you all sorts of options to make nature and all the benefits it provides investable. And it's not just hocus pocus. It's based on real science, real literature, but also, more importantly, is the real cost. Like, what's the cost? And so all we're doing here, the financial magic that we're doing, not really that magic, we're issuing on value. So we'll issue a financial instrument based on this value, but then we price it on cost. So people can buy that. So like we would issue 1.5 million certificates, but basically we would price it, each certificate, divide that, it's like a few cents per certificate or something. Like, we'd issue 1.44 million certificates. We'd look at the total number of years, right, whatnot, and we price it based on what's the actual cost of the real asset. So we're not saying come pay us for this hypothetical value that the market hasn't recognized. We're saying you're getting all this value. All this value exists. It's just underpriced, mispriced, not valued. And here's the cost to do it. And so like honestly, dude, like, if you're trying to invest in nature, you're trying to reduce wildfire risk or flood risk or whatnot, who wouldn't do these deals? Like, so that's what we're up against, and that's what we've done, and that's what we're trying to do. So if you know people who want to take advantage of mispriced, undervalued assets, raising our hand, here we are, this is the model, this is the value you get, this is what it costs. And we can do any budget, basically. And let's say you're like, well, my budget's super low, I'm a land steward, I'm a nonprofit, I don't have a way to like do the full amount. Then what we could do with a real asset investor on the back end, one of our blended finance investors, is we could set up a path, a temporary path, for as low as, in this example, $13,000 a year to protect $1.4 million of annual natural capital value. And it doesn't go in trust because there's no, it's insured, but it doesn't go in trust. There's no end date, because the way money works, right, and the way the time value of money works is that this right here does not pay back the cost of the asset. It does eventually. We can maybe work through that a little bit, but financial capital is not going to provide the money unless it gets a yield. And you're like, well, that's extractive. And it's like, well, it's not, because the capital is coming from a real asset investor to take the property, the ecosystem off the chopping block. Now it's not going to become a shopping center, an apartment building, a parking lot, whatnot. And we're paying them for the service of taking that asset off the chopping block, but they're also providing capital so that it can be permanently taken off the chopping block. So the faster we raise the money, the faster we sell certificates, the quicker the extractive model, the rent-seeking model, the debt model is gone. So like, look at that. So like, sure, I have a budget. I want to get $1.4 million of annual natural capital value for $300,000. Boom, right there in trust, T0. It's done. It's protected. That's like a land trust deal, basically. They're not getting tax benefits. They're buying the natural capital value. They're investing in the natural capital value, all the benefits it provides. But if they don't have that money today, we provide an option. We can do it in the next 5 years, next 2040, next 2050. We could, I have exactly, let's say $40,000. Then we could put it in trust, probably somewhere like 33. All of our financial model right here. So we have all this, these spreadsheets and whatnot that spit out the numbers. We just run the number here, and we can do, we can do a blended finance model. You can do 0% down there. You can do 0% there, and it would change all the numbers. You can change that to 4%, whatever, and it spits out these different numbers. I'm not going to go through all that right now, but these numbers here would change based on whatever the budget is and who the real asset investor is. So like, we don't have to work with like real asset investors or, venture capital hedge fund investors or whoever, like, private equity investors who need 15% IRRs or 20% IRRs, blended finance investors could come and say, look, I'm happy with a 3% IRR, but I have to get a real financial return. And what we could do here is we could just plug that in, 3%, and it might risk adjusted, it might be higher, and then it spits out this year. So we underwrote that deal originally at 10%. That's like going rate of like trying to attract people. But look at it, lowers the price. The real value doesn't change. It's still $1.4 million a year, but it changes. Instead of 300, what was it, 350,000 or something? 294. Instead of 294, it goes down to 278. So you can save $20,000 of investment by doing that. And the hard part is this uninsured one, where it's like it just goes on in perpetuity, and that's what we're trying to get away from, because that's just rent seeking, and that's actually the old model of like that's where we started with like a climate lease, a biodiversity lease, and I see some people doing that in the marketplace right now, and I urge you not to do that. Get away from that model, because that is the rent seeking, the encumbrance model versus the free and clear nature owns itself model. Protect these and steward these benefits nature provides in perpetuity. So like that's why we prefer not to do this this insured basically value or this price here, because that's a perpetuity, $20,000 in perpetuity, and that's rent seeking. That's just rent basically. So if you could come up with a better budget, right, then that property can be protected permanently by 2050, et cetera. So whole financial model makes nature investable, can be done on any property. Like this is, this property was owned by Walmart, might still be. It's a beautiful property at this watershed. This river was slated for a Walmart development. Community went up in arms, then was slated for a multifamily development. Probably still is. I'm not sure who bought it or what the status of it now. This is an example of like, natural cap rate here. It's 500%. This shows you the land is undervalued. Here, this is a little more difficult because the land price, they're asking $6.6 million, but the natural capital value based on current ecosystem condition of 7 only produced $2 million of natural capital value. That's okay. I mean, it's not great, but that's okay because insurance provides a way to still protect, conserve, restore that. You could uplift that ecosystem value, get it up to an 8, a 9, then this value is going to go up. Negotiate a better deal with Walmart, get them to donate $2 million of the price. That value goes down, so then the natural cap rate goes up. And that's this formula here. So if we went, like I'm running out of time here, so we're not going to go into that. But if you inputted those flows, you can run those numbers. Let's just do it real quick. Let's just say, 2 million and 6.6. Let's just do it real quick. 2 million and 6.6. Oh, I don't want to edit that one. I want to enter the here. 31%. So let's go 31%. All right, so it's close enough. Let's go 32% because rounding error. All right, it's actually closer to 30%. What it is. All right, that's what it is. Yeah. So there's our numbers. We got flows of natural capital based on current ecosystem condition at 7. Walmart wants $6.6 million for the property. That's a 30% natural cap rate. Let's say you were to uplift that natural capital value to $3 million, or we were able to do a more accurate natural capital value, or you were able to sell some carbon credits or biodiversity credits, whatnot. That in theory makes that property worth $10 million, and you can make this a bankable asset. Like it takes a $6 million cost and it makes the value of that property $10 million based on cap rate. And this isn't magic. This isn't funny money. This is exactly how the commercial investment real estate model works. Lenders all across the world, private equity, high net worth investors operate on this model. If you change the cap rate, if you change the NOI or the flow value, or if you change the value of the property, the other two change, or one of the other ones change. It's relational. So this whole thing is relational. So let's say we're able to get the cap rate up. Let's just see what happens. 50% natural cap rate. Oh yeah. So kind of the same thing. I don't have it. I'm not going to go into the example here, but if we were to negotiate a better deal with Walmart, I guess we could use this same formula. I don't want to build the formula right now. Like if we were to negotiate a better deal with Walmart, this cap rate is going to go up. Like let's just do it. Let's say this was $2 million. We're live. We're not editing this right now, so who cares? Well, let's do it. $2 million. We're at a 30% natural cap rate. Those were our original numbers. And let's just copy this right here. Let's not, I don't think I need to edit that. Let's just do this. Let's say we were to negotiate that deal at $4 million with Walmart, or they were able to donate part of it. And the natural cap rate is, it's going to be 50%, I think. Let's just go equals that divided by that, 50% natural cap rate. So you see how the natural cap rate changes? The natural capital value did not change. But if you were able to work with a landowner or an investor and negotiate a better deal, your natural cap rate changes. And so it's like this relational value thing that starts to triangulate the flows of natural capital versus the real asset cost. That's what this whole thing is about. How do you make this realistic? How do you make it tangible? And so like what's kind of crazy is like the goal in my eyes of how you kind of compare like like when you want to do a natural asset deal is when you actually talking about the Walmart, the Walmart wetlands deal. We're talking about this deal over here, right here, the riparian deal. But let's say Walmart. Say, look, let's do it for our transaction costs, where we have dollars into this property basically. So let's copy this. $200% cap rate. So like all of a sudden, look how attractive that deal is, maybe to an investor, to a blended finance group, to a philanthropy. Walmart gets kudos for lowering the price. Maybe they get a tax break because they wrote off that $5 million. But the natural cap rate went up to 200%. And that makes it a conservation deal should be done, because you're getting $2 million of natural capital value for $1 million. And yeah, there's some concessions in this example, but that's when a deal should be done, basically. And yeah, deals should probably be done on these, but the threshold really is like this like 100% rate of like, if you say like $2 million, like if that's kind of goal, it actually helps to balance natural capital value and income value of a real asset. If you have like center, for example, we could issue these certificates on a shopping center, for example, or a retail strip center, or an apartment building. The income from the apartment building might only be $200,000 a year, but maybe they have a bunch of open space, or instead of the drainage retention pond being this fenced in blob, you make it into a beautiful garden or productive wetlands or beavers. Walmart has even done beavers in the past. But basically, you could start to look at these numbers based on 100%. That's kind of the threshold of like anything under 100% is probably more of an anthropocentric, like human deal of like, it starts to lean more towards, yeah, that probably should be like a human-based apartment building, should maybe be food, it should maybe be timberland. The ecosystem value, the ecological value, natural capital value is not high enough to justify the real asset cost. That's really what it comes down to. Like that's kind of the example here of like the flows of natural capital are $2 million a year. The cost of the deal is $6.6 million. Cap rate below 100%, natural cap rate below 100%. It's kind of like, yeah, maybe that property is going to turn into affordable housing, but it might not, because hey, we have this new model. We can value the natural capital. Maybe Walmart will work with us. Maybe we can crowdfund half the money. Maybe we have a high net worth investor that will give the other part of the money, and we're getting $2 million So let's just look at those numbers though at this 30%. Like we underwrote a policy here. So this one, these numbers are flipped, right? Because remember on the last one, the natural capital value is bigger. This bubble is bigger than the real asset value. Here, the real asset value is bigger, but this is an annual number. So all it takes is a couple years of flow value to then offset this cost value. So that's like where this time value money and cap rates come into play, is like, hey, if we spread this out, look at what happens. So there's the wetlands, there's the developable area. There's the flood zone right here. I mean, most of it can't be developed unless you develop in the flood zone. And I'm going to wrap this up in 2 minutes here because it's 5 o'clock coming up quick. But the numbers look pretty close, right? Like to that other graph. Like I could look at it a linear way. It's like not like, it's a little more realistic, but a log kind of shows us like, okay, what's the comparable value of, like, you're still getting more value than what you're paying. And here, this is the main difference. The cost today is more, and that's why deals don't get done. That's why land sits there for 5 years, 10 years off the market, or doesn't get sold, doesn't get developed, because the highest and best use of the property as an apartment building or whatnot, it costs too much to get the cash flow stream as a hotel or an apartment building. And same with natural capital. There's no, the natural capital value is not a market value yet. So like right now, this deal cannot get done because the market does not recognize this natural capital value yet. But if we can start to get people to recognize the natural capital value, and people can start to do deals this way and start to bank and invest and have financial instruments to do deals this way, then all of a sudden these deals become market feasible deals. And our model, like I said, protects it from day one, permanent protection at the end of the insurance policy period. But the Walmart deal right here, like it doesn't really make sense today. But wait a minute. Oh, if we spread it out over the next 5 years, 2030, spread it out over 2050, it all of a sudden financially might start to make sense, because look at the value to society that you're protecting. And if you're these homeowners right here, if you're looking for flood protection, if you own this building, if you are the insurer with an I of all these properties, and let's say you think there's wildfire risk, God forbid, in this area, like by protecting this and keeping it as wetlands and keeping it as floodplain, you're actually protecting and enhancing all these other developed values. And so why wouldn't you invest, right? Like here's the issue today, T0. I'm not going to do that deal because I have to invest $6 million to get $2 million of hypothetical value. But if you're a reinsurance company and you're like, wait a minute, I could protect $2 million of value for 1.1 a year, 600,000 a year, 500,000 a year. It makes sense to invest. These aren't donations. These aren't costs. These are tradable investment assets that we're creating. So like we would issue 2 million certificates of insurance, and then we would price it based on these numbers over here, depending on how the policy that we write on it. And all of a sudden, those tradable instruments are like, wait a minute, I got $2 million of valuable for $500,000 of cost, but it's not a cost, it's not a donation, it's an investment, because those can be resold, those can be converted to the coins we're working on. We're building liquidity across all these assets. I'm not going to go there now, but that's been enough. 501. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you've been listening, I was going to go to a third property here, which is like kind of how it shows how it's unrealistic in some cases. Like, Josh, this is the property you showed us or brought to us to do evaluation. Beautiful, like forest, wetlands, floodplain. Only produces though $246,000 of natural capital value a year, and they want like, I can't remember, Josh, you can ping me, but like $2 million or $3 million for this property. So like the natural capital values, like, or the insurance, like we can't really write, we didn't write a policy on that, or we didn't draft a policy on that. So that's an example of like, some of these deals, it's just better to, sorry, but to like you're gonna have to get a land trust to do that. You're gonna have to get a high net worth investor. Probably won't work under our model unless we did a 2050 policy, which we probably could do. But thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Whatnot. Have a beautiful Labor Day weekend. And if you have questions, hit me up, Timo Industries on Twitter or Farcaster, Base App, whatnot. More active over there, but also active on LinkedIn. DM me. I'm going to say my cell phone number here because it's a video, 970-618-4086. Again, 970-618-4086. It's a U.S. number. Ping me. Happy to underwrite any natural asset you're working on, whether you're a land steward, insurance company, carbon project developer, wetlands developer, real estate developer, what you name it. Or if you're an investor and you're just trying to understand this, we will underwrite a deal for you for free. And if the deal works and you give us the go ahead and you have the proper legal mechanisms in place or can get them in place, we will issue you certificates of insurance on those, and you can start selling and trading and buying and whatnot. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend.